Thank you for joining us on our QTV Business and Economy program. The Business and Economy program is intended to promote the ideals of a corporate Gambia identity with the objective of forging partnerships through dialogue between the public and the private sector, civil society organizations, and the international community. In today's episode, we have invited a distinguished personality. It has been 100 days since his assumption into office. And today we have the Lord Mayor of KMC, Mr. Talib Bensouda. Mr. Bensouda has been invited to share with us during his first 100 days what has his achievements been, what has been the challenges, what is the way forward, what legacy does he want to leave for himself. These, ladies and gentlemen, will inform our discussions for the next 1 hour. Mr. Bensouda, welcome to the Business and Economy program.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
100 days you've assumed the leadership position at the KMC.
Yes.
I know because I've been following you, I've seen what you've been doing, I've been reading the papers, I've been following you on social media as well. Now, since coming into office, 100 days, I know you've been keeping tabs as well. And during the campaign trail, you have made some campaign promises. The one that I could vividly remember was the one about turning the fortunes of the KMC, and you believed at the time that the KMC could realize $1 billion as long as revenues were concerned.
Yes.
And I think it's time that, you know, I mean, political leaders in this country have big, hairy, and audacious goals. Now, what has been your experience since, you know, assuming office? What has been the realities? What have you found in terms of realities at the KMC? And what has been your achievements, if you may dilate on those, and what has been the challenges so far?
Thank you so much, Mr. Roberts. I'd like to thank QTV for inviting me to this program. I also like to say hello to the listeners at home. As you rightly said, I've just clocked my 100 days on the 28th of August 2018. I assumed office 21st May, and as you rightly said, it's been challenging. Most challenges we expected, some bigger than we thought, and things move slower than we thought. But overall, I think it's been a very good experience. I have a very good council. I have councillors who are very supportive. The admin staff, at least on the director level, I've seen many of them who are very willing to make a difference. The challenge would be capacity issues. The big question is, are they capable to execute? And this is why during my campaign, I said our first priority is to restructure the KMC. How we will do this is that we have instituted Appointments and Establishment Committee. So council has 9 committees that advises it. These committees are made up of experts in the relevant fields and also councillors. So our Appointments and Establishment Committee is looking into an HR audit of all council staff to do a gap analysis to ensure that people with the right qualifications are in the right positions. And that audit will be concluded September 31st, meaning this month, at the end of this month. So at the end of that audit, we're going to have recommendations about restructuring the council administrative-wise. And this is all in order to ensure we have the right human resources to be able to tap into the resources, as you said, I once talked about during my campaign, which is that KMC has residencies of about 50,000. We have a population of up to 500,000. We have 18 markets. But if you look at the revenue the council is registering or accounting for, it's a little over 120 million. This is 2017. So somebody who's been in business, who knows a little about the economy, looking at our GDP, looking at what the central government tax base is, I know that these figures are unrealistic. This is why I said I have a gut feeling that these figures can be up to 1 billion. And I will set a goal for myself to achieve this during my term. So what we've done is first to try and structure the revenue base. What this means is our finance committee, which is also set up with experts, is looking into a mapping, addressing and also physical addressing exercise, which will be also accompanied with a valuation of all properties. So the last valuation rule was from 2003, and that's what people are paying their rates on. So based on the valuation rule of 2003, when properties were last valued within the Kanifing Municipal Council, we expect rates of about $84 million annually. This is what we expect based on that valuation rule. Although I must make a point that the municipality has never collected more than 50% of that amount. So we would just assume that forward 2018, where Kairaba Avenue did not exist in 2003 in terms of the amounts of banks, the amounts of buildings, now it does. Where Westfield to Bakoteh, that major highway, most of those buildings did not exist, now they do. Where a lot of the properties in Kairaba, in KMC were empty plots, and we are supposed to pay $400 rates, that's the empty plot rate. Now they have multi-million-dollar complexes or multi-million-dollar complexes. So one would assume that if a valuation rule is redone 2018, we might look at tripling or quadrupling those figures. So we have set out to ensure that we do a mapping exercise, which we plan to tender through a competitive bidding process, to invite experts who would like to come on board and bid for it. However, we also want to engage key stakeholders in the private sector, because we were saying that we would be one beneficiary, but the entire economy would gain. The banking sector would gain. We understand banks obviously give credit. They need to know where their customers are. They need to have addresses. Many banks face the challenges of swift transfers, where they can't have customer addresses put on it, and they have challenges with their intermediary banks. Other sectors such as telecoms would also benefit big time from addressed society, a mapped society. I understand at some point Gamtel had arrears of $2 billion because they did not know where people are. People had telephone lines, but they were not easy to get a hold of or to find. So we believe this would add immensely to the GDP of the Kanifing municipality. So we are going to try and engage stakeholders and see how we can all come together and contribute towards this very necessary exercise.
Thank you very much. You pretty much dilated on the bits regarding revenue collection and some of the expansion areas that you're looking at. And I want to agree with you that if the last valuation rule was, since 23, then definitely that in itself is a pocket, for much improvement coming in. But you did not talk about, potential revenue streams, from stalls, from car parks, I mean, I know you mentioned shops and compounds and businesses. But are those areas as well that you're looking at? Because when I look at the municipality, I mean, especially if you look at parking, within the municipality, it is a great challenge. But I think it being a challenge as well, it presents an opportunity.
Absolutely.
So is that an area that you're also looking at in terms of enhancing your revenue base that might help you to deliver on some of the things that you're looking at delivering on?
Absolutely. So I would like to distinguish, there's something we already call car park fees.
Okay.
Well, this is something the municipality used to collect by standing on the road, sending officers to stand on the road, create checkpoints, and ask motorists to pay. But eventually it became such a big problem for trade, especially with our partners in the region, obviously because the amount of delays, the amount of leakages and harassment. So the former president asked that the municipality stop charging car park fees and have GRA do it, and through the renewal of licenses, which I think was good. But what had happened is eventually GRA started taking the money and was not transparent with the councils. And this became an issue because I remember I looked at the records in 2007 when council was collecting this revenue, they could collect up to 7 million. But when GRA started collecting it, they were paying councils only 1 million. So we had written a joint letter amongst all chairmen and the mayoress of Banjul to the president, asking that all executive directives, which we believe were unconstitutional, that removed revenues from the council and passed it to central government. We want those to be reversed. So we just had a meeting last week actually at OP with all the stakeholders, GRA, Ministry of Finance, NRA, and we came to agreement that the car park fees now will 100% come to councils and will be reported in a transparent manner. So I understand that is charged with the $1 they charge per liter on every fuel purchase. But I think what you're asking, I think, which is more appropriately named, is to create parking lots and actually make money off of that. This is something definitely we're looking at, not just as a revenue stream, but also to organize our streets. As you can see, we have a lot of vehicles on the road, not enough roads, if I may add, and also nowhere to park. So somewhere like Serakunda Market, which is a commercial center, which is a major market, it's impossible to go shopping there if you have a car. So it's better to take public transport and get off. So it's something we are looking at. Our biggest challenge is a lack of land. And this is why we have written to the Ministry of Lands, asked them to not be allocating lands randomly and to ask the municipality's opinion, the council's opinion, every time they want to issue out land, because we believe it's one of the best resources we have. And land is important for planning. And this is why we have the problems we have today due to the issuing of lands without a master plan, without zoning laws, etc. So it's definitely important. But in terms of answering your question more directly, we are looking at different ways to create new revenue streams. So one example which you mentioned is kiosks. So KMC is looking to create its own standardized kiosk. The interim management committee, which was led by Bakoteh had put an embargo on all kiosks, meaning we are not letting anyone to put up new kiosks by themselves. We want to bring our own standard kiosk, which is nice to look at. Also, we want to own them because we want to control where they are placed. Thirdly, we want to ensure that they are easily moved, because remember, these are public lands. So we're currently working with a company called MA Finish. They're the only company that's doing those types of kiosks, which are easily assembled and dismantled. And we're looking at piloting with a few companies these movable kiosks. But we want to take it a step further. We want to create advertisement space panels around the kiosk and try to sell it to big companies. So we can take a company which is in telecoms and sell them 100 spaces on kiosk. So I think it will be a success. This is our gut feeling. Already we are piloting with one company, and on that agreement alone, KMC would not put up any money. The company would put up the entire capital required, and based on 2 years worth of rent, we would make 700,000 on day one without putting up any money. So we are coming up with creative ways to bring revenue to council, rather than just the traditional lines of revenue.
I want to ask, what has your experience been in terms of structure at the level of the municipality, in terms of databases being created to especially monitor bids regarding revenue and administration in general? What is your take on that? I mean, because I've heard a lot of nuances that KMC have not been able to realize the revenues that it's supposed to realize. I mean, you mentioned here that the valuation roll, from the last valuation roll of 2003, you were supposed to get about 84 million, but you hardly even collected 50. Is that as a result of perhaps the KMC at the time not leveraging technology to help them in the assessment, the capability to generate reports, so that you can know exactly where you stand, who's paying, who's not paying?
I think that's one of the problems. We definitely don't have databases. But I think you need the data first, and this is also another issue. Rates and licenses are a little better, but in terms of markets, for example, how many stalls exist, how many tables exist in the market, there's no information. So it's difficult to say exactly how much revenue you're expecting from these areas. But I think the problem is bigger though than just the lack of data and databases, because a lot of the people we're issuing demand notes to are not paying or have not been paying for a long time. And the outstanding on these rates is above 200 million. A lot of them actually are even government agencies. You'd be surprised. And they've not been paying. But I think it's one of the reasons is the council has not been a credible institution for a very long time. I think a lot of people over the years did not care because they did not believe they benefited from paying. Although, just to make it clear, it's against the law. You must pay your rates just like you must pay your taxes. Another issue is, I believe, is the council did not have the enforcement capacity, as opposed to, let's say, GRA, who would follow you and ensure that punitive measures are taken for people to pay their taxes. KMC just never had the teeth to ensure that rates are paid, and this is one of the big issues. So we want to take a carrot and stick approach. We want to make sure that we first sensitize people about the importance of paying their dues, but also seeing is believing. We want to start doing things, being visible, so people can see their rates at work, their taxes at work. But also, we are not ignorant of the fact that we also need the enforcement capacity, just in case, because there are people who would not pay regardless of whether you do good or not. They just won't. So that's why enforcement always has to be there if you want to be in governance. So I think a combination of issues, mostly pointing to I think capacity, mostly pointing to I think credibility issues, and a culture really that's not geared towards serving, a culture that's not geared towards ensuring that people's taxes are at work. So I think it's a combination of an institution that was on the decline, and this is the culture we want to change. It's not going to be easy. Like I said, people are people. They just need to be inspired. They just need to be taught, to be made aware. And hopefully we believe, even with a lot of the KMC staff, we believe we can change them. And since this new council has come in place, we've actually seen some people getting more motivated and actually wanting to make a difference.
But let me touch on the bit regarding hesitation of people to pay for whatever reason. Chances are you will still have, some bits of that, some pockets of that.
You will definitely.
Yes. So this issue that you're talking of in terms of enforcement, are there practical measures that you would look into putting into place so that in event they don't pay? Because the Gambian, you have to lead by you have to make examples out of people for them to take you seriously. So I hope this is something that you're also looking into in terms of enforcement, and when people don't pay, for them to know that they have to pay. Otherwise, as you rightly said, the stick and instead of the carrot would apply.
I think not just Gambians, I think everybody. People need structure, or the place easily turns to anarchy. People need to be first shown what to do, and like you said, they should be the stick approach. Is pay and have your taxes work for you. Don't pay and you fall into the wrong side of the law. Since we came into office, we've actually changed magistrates. Now we have a first-class magistrate at the Kanifing Municipal Court. And also we've requested for 2 prosecutors from the Gambia Police Force, also to increase the capacity of the enforcement unit. Also, we are looking into recruiting the more municipal police and more inspectorate, although we want to look at the terms of reference, because we want them to be service-oriented and not just coming in to bully people or underpaid low-level staff that would use their newfound power as an opportunity to be corrupt or do any side dealings. So we are definitely looking into the enforcement, because like I said, in any institution that is governing, without enforcement, governance becomes an issue. So we are definitely looking into that.
You spoke earlier in terms of some of the challenges that you have experienced. You spoke about capacity being a challenge, and how you were undertaking a gap analysis, to help in addressing that. But that is more from the administrative perspective, meaning the day-to-day operations of the council, as it were. But let's now, focus and look at the councillors themselves who are elected. These are the bona fide representatives, of the people, and it is good to also have capacity as well, as long as those councillors are concerned, because these are the very people that will work with you and take the development agenda of their people, put it on the table, convince council, as it were, that X and Y needs to happen within my municipality. Right. What has been your experience in that regard? I know you cannot do there much because these are elected positions.
No, I think what's more important than capability is willingness. Yes. And I'm lucky to have a very willing council. And they're also willing to learn. I myself, I don't know everything. And this is why we set up committees. In every committee, there are 3 experts. And in every committee, there are 3 councillors. So the experts guide the councillors to advise council. But they've been so willing to learn. In many committees, actually, they've allowed the experts to sort of take the lead. So councillors by default are the chairpersons of those committees, but the vice chair always comes from the expert. But they lead the agenda. They also lead the exercises. So in that aspect, I am very, very, very lucky. And I've not had any challenges in terms of any group of councillors going on partisan lines. Our council is made up of DOI, APRC, and UDP, but we've not seen any challenges, any divisions. Arguments are based on merit, and all the discussion is around development, and all the arguments or debates are around how do we move the KMC forward. So in that light, I am very grateful for the council I have.
That's positive. I know the municipalities, especially KM, continue to be scolded by its residents in terms of failing on their responsibilities. Absolutely. You know that refuse collection is one, garbage collection, issues of feeder roads, as well. Sanitation, especially during the rains when you go to the markets. I know you've undertaken a lot of how should I say it? These drainage exercises in which I've seen people trying to remove, the sand that has prevented the drains from actually flowing. But I know it must be a priority to you. Recently I read on social media, where you have put out advertisements, a tender for people to send in bids regarding waste management and waste collection. What has been the experience? Do you think this is an issue, a challenge that you could address, and if so, how soon? And here I'm thinking 1 year down the line.
Well, I think in terms of the refuse collection, much sooner, because with the tendering process, I'm using the law of competitive advantage. If somebody can do it better than you, then outsource. So there's a lot of businesses in the refuse collection, but they've never been engaged, and we want to be different. We know we don't have the capacity, we don't have the resources. I only found 5 refuse collection trucks at KMC, and they're mostly focused on markets, which are the biggest waste generators, but they go nowhere near the residences. So what we have is a donkey cart crisis, where donkey carts are doing house-to-house refuse collection, but because these are animals, they can't make it all the way to the right dump areas. So they just find convenient places or isolated places and just dump. So we know we need waste collection trucks, but we don't have the capital. So instead of waiting, why not use the money we have and outsource to somebody who already has the capacity. So this is why we've tendered the process, which has also been approved by GPPA. So it's on the newspapers, and I think we're getting positive responses, and hopefully we'll find a contractor. So we're saying it's an annual contract, renewable, and then we'll see what the future holds. We're doing the same thing for the Bakoteh, management of the Bakoteh dump site. Council has never managed the site well. Our experience since I started is the same. And like I said, it's a capacity issue. So we want to outsource to people who have the ability, while internally we review how to strengthen capacity, how to strengthen the institution, how to ensure that the institution is strong regardless of what politicians come. So I always tell the council that we must look at ourselves as reformers, people who will strengthen the institution. And whether a good mayor comes or a bad mayor, a good council or a bad council, the institution of KMC will be strong. And I think that is our calling.
Well, you pretty much took the next question I was going to ask right from my mouth, and this is regarding the Bakoteh dump site. Yeah. And I mean, I know the dump site as it is a challenge, and of course, this is a challenge that predates you as mayor. Yeah. And it's a timing bomb, if you will. And my question is, I know this is also to address the dump site at Bakoteh is going to take a concerted effort. Yeah. This cannot be solved at the level of the municipality alone. Government has to do its bit as well. And perhaps private sector as well. Maybe a public-private partnership initiative should be looked into to resolve that problem. But where does addressing the Bakoteh dump site meaningfully, and effectively rank in terms of your priorities, given the challenges, especially the health considerations and the health concerns, within the environs within that area, taking into consideration the orphanage, right there, opposite.
Absolutely. And the Bakoteh dump site is such a, I think it's one of the hottest issues in the Kanifing municipality, and it's one of the hottest issues I think all of us campaigned on. I mean the candidates. For me, the environment has always been the top priority. Is how do we clean the environment? How do we do refuse collection? How do we keep our markets clean and sanitary? My friend in Denmark said, markets are supposed to inspire you to buy food. You're supposed to go into the market and smell the fresh fruit and stuff. But sometimes the state of our markets, you even fear walking through it. So it's my passion. It's my top priority. But if you look at the environmental problems, Bakoteh is the top problem. So of course Bakoteh is a top priority for myself. I assured the residents of Bakoteh, I told them, myself, I will be moving there. Actually, the house I will be building is going to be in the Bakoteh area. So I definitely would not want the site to be there. So just to answer your question more directly, we have resolved, meaning the three councils of Birkama, KMC, and Banjul, we have resolved that we want to move Bakoteh dump site. We have done this through forming an intermunicipal committee, and one of our top priorities is how do we close this site. Secondly is if we have a new site, how do we prevent the mistakes of Bakoteh repeating themselves? Meaning making sure there's not a community there. Also making sure we add value, not just dump, but can we compost and create fertilizer, or can we create waste to energy? So just last week, myself, Rohi Malik Lo, and Sirifo Sonko, we met on this issue. We can't really say much because we're in the stage of searching and looking, but we believe within the next year, we would be in a position to say something about concrete plans we have for the eventual closure of the Bakoteh dump site, because it just cannot be there anymore. I told a reporter just today that I have promised that during my term, I will do everything humanly possible to close down the site. Because like you rightly said, there's a community around it, there's school around it, there's a medical center around it. And just last week, God bless his soul, a young boy, 13 years, lost his life there because the perimeter is not secure. So as a council, we are working on an emergency basis. We want to secure the perimeter. We want to hand the temporary management to people better equipped, while we look at long-term solutions on how to bring about the eventual closure of the dump site.
During my 10th episode of the Business and Economy program, I hosted the former mayor of Banjul, Honorable Samba Fall. And at the time, we discussed the issue of governance and what his take on governance was, as long as his former council was concerned. A follow-up question in that regard to you. Are you satisfied with the existing governance structures at the KMC? If yes, why are you satisfied? If no, what are some of the things that you're looking at to change?
In terms of
because you keep mentioning governance yourself, so I know it must be.
In terms of corporate governance.
Yeah, in terms of corporate governance, in terms of municipality governance, the councils, the councillors,
Well, the council and the councillors are new, like myself. We are the people trying to bring about the change. But in terms of the corporate governance, I dare say it barely exists, and this is why we've run into many of the problems we have. The bankruptcy of the council, the bloated liabilities, staff debts, etc., low income, lack of structures in terms of the revenue base, is because the institution was not built upon. I think this is one of the major problems we have in Gambia, where institutions are not built, handed over to the next guy who builds the first floor, handed over who builds the second floor. So we have weak institutions. I think this is a plague that affects just not the municipality, but the entire government. We need to strengthen our institutions, and this is to introduce good governance, checks and balances. Also, a good corporate culture that looks at the institution as a going concern and not just a bunch of individuals for the time being. I think to answer that question on corporate governance, I think a lot needs to be done in KMC to bring about good sense of direction, a good sense of governance, staff limits, terms of reference, etc., etc. But I think we can't get anywhere if we don't have the right capacity, if we don't have the right guys who are able to do the job. So this is why we're waiting for the HR audit to conclude. The president also had ordered a special audit by the National Audit Office. The first draft I have already seen. It's terrible. Literally on every aspect of council operations, no information or leakages or lack of data, etc., etc. It goes on and on and on. So something major needs to happen in that area. But I think we need to build over time, meaning council functions, especially the vital ones that the residents are depending on, need to be outsourced while we fix the institution internally. On the side of governance as a whole, like I said, we need the right terms of reference for our municipal police. We also need to ensure we get the right guys for the police. I even went as far as telling the police commander, why don't you go to the law school and see if you could recruit? What if we increase the pay scale? Maybe we could attract some of these students who are doing some law. Maybe they'd have an interest in criminal law or career, and they can start from the level of an officer and rise to the level of a prosecutor or judge, who knows, magistrate. So it's very important to set a good terms of reference, also get the right people with the right capacity. This is the only way we can bring about governance, because governance has to go side with justice, and people need to understand the law. They need to understand people's civil rights, and they also need to understand how to communicate, because I believe Gambians want to do the right thing, but they need to understand that the law benefits everybody, and not just taking the law into their own hands. So I just had an example today with one of the journalists. I told him about this one-tier situation. Every time you want to have a one-tier, you'll always have a group that says, one tier will not happen here. You have a group that says one tier will happen here by any means. So people are routinely taking the law into their own hands. But what we are always telling them is this one tier is going to benefit everybody, because the money raised is what we reinvest back into the market. So I think they need to be sensitized. And this is one of the major challenges, is to educate our people about abiding by the law. So we also have a challenge with littering. The same people who complain that KMC is not picking up the litter are the same people littering. So I think there's a value challenge there, where a lot of us are not valuing the environment. So I actually said today, I challenge every teacher, every parent, every religious leader to teach people and continuously preach about valuing one's environment. And I think that would go a long way, because what you will notice is when the same Gambians go to the Western world, they don't dare litter, because the environment is clean and people who value the environment are surrounding them. The moment you litter, you don't expect a cop to stop you. No, a fellow citizen or civilian will stop you and tell you to pick it up. So same thing should be applied here.
I'll tell you how they do it in Singapore. Singapore was a developing country like ours, and it came down to enforcement. And if you are found littering, people in Singapore were hesitant as well to report each other that Ben is littering here, or Mr. Bensuda is littering there. But when you are caught, you are fined. And they had people who were walking around, and police plainclothes police. And then when you are caught, you
pay a big fine.
You pay a big fine, and sometimes you are even thrown into jail. So over time, people decided to now respect and not litter. And you would walk in Singapore now, you would not even find, you dare not. So perhaps these are things that we should look into as well. You spoke about the issue of governance, and I want to just briefly talk on the issue of the Local Government Act, because I know that this in itself, the act in itself, should perhaps help to give some guidelines in terms of the overall governance. That obtains that the how is the act? Is that
it has a lot about governance. The committees, some of them, they actually specify how these committees should be set up, from nominated councillors to how many bank accounts the council should hold, to signatories to the account, reporting lines. It's pretty clear about these rules, but in many cases you find that they are not being followed. One of the first things we did is we passed a resolution in one of our first General Council meetings that the management should reduce the amount of bank accounts, because they were having about 6. When the Finance and Audit Act says there should just be one general fund account. So we have reduced it from 6 to 3, and eventually we want to comply with the act to bring it down to just one account. So there's many more, which even like I said, the National Audit Office has referenced that the council has not been over the years complying. Another one is even the budget. It states that 60% of council's budget should go towards development purposes. Only 40% should go towards administrative. But over the years, it was the opposite. Right. So the act does say a lot about governance. However, the act needs to be reviewed, and that's what we are advocating for. We are telling central government, we are an elected council, meaning the people are going to hold us responsible for what happens in the municipality. We believe the act should be empowering us. So one thing we are advocating for, there's what we call the Local Government Service Commission, which the act says the Minister of Local Government should set up to handle HR matters of council, especially the high-level HR. But we are saying, no, the council should have those powers. We are elected, we are a body that can create the necessary checks and balances. We believe we should handle our own HR if we are truly going to be independent, truly going to have autonomy, and if really people should really hold us responsible, because you cannot elect me every day, say the mayor is not doing anything, he's not being effective, but at the same time I don't have control over the administration.
Even I mean, the ministry is overwhelmed, as it were. I mean, the Ministry of Local Government, we all know that dealing with the issues of land in itself alone, you know, is overwhelming. You know, much more trying to bring on board something that is just going to, you know, drown you. But let me just move on in terms of the support that Council has from central government, because I understand that at the level of central government, you are supposed to work hand in glove with local, with the Ministry of Lands, local government, because that is your, line ministry, if I will. The support has been said that government has not been too supportive to the municipalities, and that they have not been meeting their obligations.
They have not.
You know, so and I know that you know, during your campaign, I keep referring to this big, hairy, audacious goal of yours in terms of, you know, enhancing the revenue streams of, the municipality, which I think personally, I'll be honest with you, I think it's doable, and I think some of the points that you have made here really are clear testimony that perhaps even if you don't reach the $1 billion mark, you could get very close, and that in itself, you know, would be an achievement. But what would be the one prayer? If you had the ear of the president today to say, look, we need to move this municipality from where it is to where you guys want us to be, for the municipality, KMC as it were, to make meaningful contribution to the economic development of this country. But this is my one prayer to you, Mr. President. What prayer would that be?
That would be, like I said, I would say, Mr. President, we'd love you to review the act so it can empower the councils. We are not asking for freebies. We are not asking for unrealistic things or unsustainable things. We just want to have the power that the people have voted us for to make the change that we have told the people we are going to make. And I believe if we have the Local Government Service Commission under our purview, we would be able to make the administrative changes that could bring development faster and would eventually, I believe, benefit the president politically, because this is going to be something he will be doing to empower the councils. So for me, that's all I require, because I went out with my plans, I went out with my vision, with my manifesto, and told the people that I can deliver. However, I can't deliver with my hands tied. So all we're asking is, Mr. President, free our hands so we can deliver for the Gambian people.
You have started your tenure very well, and I'm not saying this because you're sitting here, because I follow in terms of what is happening within the municipality. I also follow what is happening on social media as well, and, you know, of course, print media. And I've seen the engagements, your postings on social media, what you're trying to do. The Bakau drains, you know, the Fajikunda drains, the Bundung drains, you name it. Fine, you know, small steps, but meaningful steps as well, because these are the sort of things that, you know, we need to see, quick wins, if you will, for us to have that comfort that, yes, here is someone that would help bring about a difference, in our way of life and in our welfare, as it were. But, what is it? Have you done any engagements at the international level, especially in terms of investments? Because you spoke about your meeting with your colleague mayors and how you have this aspiration to close Bakoteh dump site, as it were. And I would tell you this: when I was Director General at the Gambia Tourism Board in 2012, 2013. There were a group of Indian investors, you know, who were in the country, and we just happened to bump into each other, and, you know, we had drinks, and one of them had remarked that the Bakoteh dump site, as it were, is a gold mine. You know, in terms of what could be harvested there, even gases, you know, he mentioned, you know, that the whole area, you know, could actually be harvested. So, are these things that you're looking into?
Absolutely. We have re-established some of the twinning partnerships the municipality used to have. One is a city in Belgium called Massik. The other one is the city of Madison in Wisconsin. Actually, I was talking to the councillors there and their departments of planning. And we want to reignite these relationships to see what exchanges we can make and to see what interest or maybe business interest can come out of it. So we're working on that very hard. Also, like I said, I don't want to put information out prematurely, but we're also looking at the waste to energy very carefully. We've had many businesses approach us. We've also had, we've approached certain businesses as well. And I think we're getting close to feasibility status, where now we're talking to businesses who believe it can be feasible. So we don't want to put too much out there and give people false hope. Well, let's just say the 3 councils are committed. And I believe, like I said, where there's a will, there's a way. So hopefully we'll have good things come out of that.
For the most part, I am an optimist. But if I look at the council, KMC as it were, I mean, I'm talking of KMC because you are the one who seated here. So I'm not talking about the other, councils. I have an outlook that is bleak in terms of the KMC, and I would just read this out to you, that the challenges of the KMC municipality, as per my assessment, and I could be wrong, I'm just putting out there, I'm just being a devil's advocate, that the challenges of the KMC will continue to grow considering the rural-urban drift and the increasing population density of the municipality. This ultimately would result in increasing demand for better municipality amenities as a result of growth in refuse generation amid reducing spatial space, as you rightly mentioned, and the compoundings of the challenges due to increasing population growth outpacing economic growth, because these are realities that we have been living in. This outlook that I've pinpointed, do you agree? Don't you agree? If you don't agree, give me 2 reasons why you don't agree.
Well, I think these challenges are faced by all cities or all towns or all urban areas, but it's the government's responsibility to catch up or also to plan ahead. I believe a lack of planning long term is what brought us here, but if we don't plan long term, I think we'll be even in more trouble than we find ourselves today, because like you rightly said, the population will just continue ballooning. Also, as we speak, KMC schools are under pressure, health facilities are under pressure, the road network is under pressure. So this is why during the Meet the People talk, I snatched the opportunity to tell the president, I believe KMC is the commercial capital of Gambia, and therefore most road projects should come to KMC, because it's not only going to be symbolic, but also we face most of the population pressures. KMC is the most densely populated area in Gambia, where there's 5,000 people per square kilometer, as opposed to 176 per square kilometer average across the country. So he said he had a different opinion, but I believe he understands, because we actually don't have any roads. We don't have a drainage network. Most of our people live in flood-prone areas. Well, like I said, the planning has to start. I think the realization first, we have to come to terms with reality, and then we have to start seriously planning. But we need to be empowered right away, and I believe the government would not have a choice but to eventually invest in the municipality.
You have been elected into office. I believe you had an overwhelming majority and a lead in the polls. There are lots of expectations from people, resting on you. What sort of a support are you looking at from the people that elected you in order for you to be able to deliver on your mandate?
Just like I've been repeating today, I just want people to be good citizens, meaning just not wait, just not complain, but to be proactive in the communities. Because at the end of the day, municipal government is a community government. It is made up by the grassroots. So we need people to be engaged. We need people also to comply, to not litter. Back in the day, every household would clean their house and also go outside the house and also clean in front of their house. But we don't see that happening in many areas. There used to be a lot of tecito, where people would willingly just come together and dig the gutters or contribute, but people are more and more unwilling. Anytime, even councillors, a lot of the time when they try, in certain times, people will say, well, what do I get? So we just want the residents of the municipality to be good citizens. We know they are good people, but we want them to be good citizens. Let's love the municipality like we love our homes, like we love our families. Let's love the environment, and things will be easy. It will be easy to implement. It will be easy to bring about change, because it's change brought about by everyone, which is 500,000 residents. So that's the message I have for them.
Now, I'm going to go political now. And I know, I'm sure you have a good idea in terms of where I'm going to drive. You campaigned and stood within the UDP ticket, and you've won. As it were, it would seem as if the UDP is actually on a high. There has been lots of talk in terms of people saying that, well, Talib Bensouda is being groomed to be the next presidential candidate for the UDP. I mean, especially if one looks at the age of, the leader of the party, Honorable Dabo. Is that just rumor mill being rumor mill?
It's pure rumor. And I always ask them, can you show me who the groomer is? Because I haven't seen the groomer. But like I said, it's politics. You're going to have people who like you. You're going to have people who don't like you. Some people say, he's the best mayor. I've not been here for 3 months. Some people say, he's the worst mayor. I've not been here for 3 months. So like I said, political rhetoric and gossip, let's just let it be. But I was elected to be the mayor of Kanifing municipality with a clear mandate, and that's all I plan to execute.
Now, perhaps the last question that we would have time to discuss on this panel. I want to look at 4 things. Public finance management, record automation, transparency and public disclosure of municipality business, and accountability. If I were to ask you to rank these in order of priority to you as the challenges that you have and what you deem is most crucial and most relevant, as it were, how would you rank these? I can repeat them. Public finance management, record automation, transparency and public disclosure of municipality business, and accountability. Or all 4 are at par?
I think the transparency and public disclosure and accountability is of a higher priority than the other 2, because at the end of the day, we are managing public funds. One reporter said, well, Mr. Mayor Bensouda, I think you should be more protective of your office, and you should look at leakages, because there's a lot of information leaking to the media. I told him, well, nothing in this office should not be said if you are afraid it would leak, because it's a public office. Everything said here is public. Everything done here is public. It is owned by the people, and we're here to serve the people. So I would rank accountability, transparency a little higher than the other 2, but all are important. But
automation, I know we spoke about it earlier. I mean, I know, actually, your brother was on the very first episode on this program. CD. You know, and he's very passionate, and rightly so, because he's in that field in terms of ICT and what ICT could help do for us as a country. I mean, actually, most of the folders I've had discussions on this forum have been on ICT. I even had the Minister of Information Technology on this platform. But is that something that you would also look into? Because I think it could make a whole lot of a difference as long as effective administration of the municipality is concerned. So is this something that you would also pay attention to?
Absolutely. I think it's of utmost importance. With KMC, I think I'm the first to introduce a Kanifing email. For the first time in the history of the council. We have now kanifing.gm, also the first website. So just getting the staff to use the email is a challenge. So like I said, part of the issue is capacity training, also sensitizing people about the importance of ICT and communication systems, databases, etc. Because you have to have people who value these things to be able to effectively use them. So definitely automation will definitely increase efficiency and delivery of service, but structures need to be there because the ICT is working on data, so and data needs structure. So this is all the things we plan to introduce once we have the right structures in place.
Mr. Bensouda, it was a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you so much.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
All the best of success.
Thank you so much.
Viewers, thank you very much for joining us on our QTV Business and Economy program. This was all we had for you today. Thank you.